following program on Ada Derana 24 is classified for general audience. It is intended for all ages. It contains little or no violence, no strong language, and little or no sexual dialogue or situations.
Very good evening, and you're joining us on another episode on Business Best, and we will be introducing to you people who have excelled in their particular field in order to showcase their latest developments in their respective industry. Now, we're going to talk about a firm which has been in this industry for quite some time now. I'm pretty sure everybody would have heard about this institution as well. It's the SLTC Research Institute, and we've decided to talk about this firm and this institute because there has been a new Vice Chancellor that has been appointed, and we are going to have an interview with him and the COO of the same institute as well in order to see what sort of change that they are about to bring to the SLTC Research University as well. So with that introduction, I would like you to be introduced to Professor Veranja Karunaratne, who is the newly appointed Vice Chancellor. So congratulations on your new post as well. And also Mr. Sandeep Jayawardana, who is the COO. Thank you so much for taking the time today to talk to me on the show.
Thank you.
All right. So to start off with, sir, I think our viewers will also want to know a little bit about yourself, about your new role, and how you got here.
By training, I'm an organic chemist. I did my PhD in British Columbia University in Canada. I've been in the pharma industry for about 10 years in Canada. So at a point in time, I wanted to return back to Sri Lanka. So came back during the war years in 1996. Actually, the war was raging, but then there is a saying that there is no perfect time to get back home, and I just couldn't be bothered too much about extra factors because your kids get big every day, and you need to go at a time, and that's the time you need to go. So came back and I joined the University of Peradeniya. Eventually worked there full-time for about 12 years, became a professor, and then we were called on national duty to the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology on secondment from the university to start a brand new initiative on a public-private partnership to develop nanotechnology products in Sri Lanka, which became a great success, and we proved that in Sri Lanka science can earn money. So that was one of the big things we did. So we continued like that, and then I realized I've been in the state sector university for a long time, and in the last 5-10 years I realized the contributions that the non-state or the private sector makes in undergraduate education. So when SLTC board approached me and asked me whether I've been willing and interested to take on this new job, after a little bit of thinking, I realized that this is an opportunity for me to make a difference to a different sector than from where I came from.
That's quite a journey, and I would really like to know what sort of changes that you would want to bring into SLTC Research University as well. But before that, Mr. Sandeep, if you could give a small introduction to yourself as well.
Okay. All right. So I'm not from academia. My background is actually from the private sector and finance. So I was part of a group of private sector investors and corporates who actually invested in SLTC Research University last year. So in the middle of all the economic challenges and everything, we took this view that the private sector does need to get involved in private education in Sri Lanka if we're going to reach our targets and our goals that the government has set for the education sector. So so I represent that group of people. We've been working with the university now for about a year. I met Professor Veranja in January, and so SLTC, we're very proud of this research university tagline that we have, and Professor Veranja's qualifications and CV was perfect for our university. So when he told me that he was retired and he had a bit of spare time on his hands, it was a perfect marriage for us. So we invited Professor Veranja to take a role in SLTC, and we're very grateful that he's taken that up.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So before we come into the changes that you all are planning to bring into SLTC Research University, what is the current status at the moment, and what are the things that you all want to change from that point onwards?
Well, I think SLTC, you quite rightly, Sandeep too mentioned that we have a tagline called, we are called the Research University, right? So I firmly believed that gives a great opportunity for the campus at this point to shift focus and become that research university. And if you have a tagline, you must become the tagline, right? Otherwise it becomes a burden on you.
Sure.
So we are planning to initiate a number of programs to embrace that tagline. We want to enhance the quality of our fourth year undergraduate research that we do and get them to publish their work in conferences and in journals, and also to introduce or enhance our currently existing postgraduate faculty to a higher level where we offer masters, MPhils and PhD programs. That as well as by modernizing our undergraduate laboratories, because we are primarily an engineering university, right, and IT secondarily. By modernizing our undergraduate engineering labs, we want to bring the industry to the campus so that industry would want to do their research inside the campus. And that way, I think in all those descriptions I made about the changes that we plan to do in research would definitely not only would benefit the students, the country, but also we become our tagline as well in the process.
Okay, so with these changes, how do you think it will benefit the students who are going to join SLTC at the moment? And what are the current facilities that you all provide?
Well, actually, it's no secret with the incoming artificial intelligence revolution, right? In the entirety of the human history, we have reached a point where we cannot predict how the job market structure would be even in the next 20 years. We have never been in this situation before as a species, as a human race, right? That you couldn't predict the future beyond 20 years.
That's right.
So in that climate, I think the kids who enter the job market today would need to retrain themselves several times during their working life. So unlike our grandparents or grandfather who did one job until retirement, it doesn't work anymore. So we need to give those skills to the students who now from SLTC would enter the job market, meaning that they need to become problem solvers, because the job market requires people who can solve problems. Yes, they need high GPAs, otherwise you won't get called to an interview. But once you get past that gate, you need to be problem solvers to get ahead in the job. And I think that is our prime objective at SLTC, understanding that the job market is going to be complicated for the kids who enter the job market. We want to make sure, we want to inculcate in them by the teachings that we do inside for them to excel in this dynamically changing environment, which is the job market. So if they have to reskill themselves every few years because their previous job has now become obsolete, they should be in that mindset.
Mr. Sandeep, so would you like to add on to what Professor just said?
Yes. I could probably summarize it into 2 points. One is what we teach, and second is how we teach. So when I say what we teach, we need to gear our education into preparing students who have the skills to meet the current and future job market. So tea, rubber, coconut, maybe even apparel, those are industries of the last century. The future is how we plug into the global supply chains for electronics, or Tesla, Apple, they're setting up in India. How does Sri Lanka plug into those
the tech industry?
The tech industry, the value chains. India grew on its software industry. So what will take Sri Lanka forward in the next 10 to 15 years? So we have identified engineering, technology, IT as core areas that SLTC should focus on. Even our business faculty gears its students towards finding employment in those industries. So we feel like that is the future, and that's where we gear our students into into finding employment in. And then secondly, how we teach, right? So I think when I was in school, and I think when Professor Veranja was in school, we still learnt off a blackboard and chalk. So there's a bit of an age gap between us, but things didn't change in those years. Now, I mean, how you teach changes every year at light speed. So SLTC, we take pride in evolving with the changing teaching methods. It's not just I lecture, you memorize and write it on a piece of paper. As Professor said, it's critical thinking, working in a team, problem solving, communication. Those are the skills that we're trying to develop by creating a campus. So a university experience, not just come for lectures, study for 8 hours and go home. We are a residential campus actually, so we would like our students to come and stay with us. You know, spend 3-4 years with your peer group, spend 3-4 years with the PhDs and the academics who are working and researching at SLTC. And that experience is what will stand you in good stead as you go into the job market and into the future.
All right, Mr. Sandeep, you said a very important point as to how, you know, the industries are changing, and you never know how the job markets are changing here in Sri Lanka or globally per se. And it's important that we identify the correct industry and the correct course that we want to study in, thinking of the future as well. So sometimes children are not aware about this situation. They just look at the current context without foreseeing the future. So to get more details on this, we will be having a discussion. But before that, we have to go into a short commercial break. We'll be back soon. You're watching Business Best. Welcome back to Business Best, and we were in discussion with Professor Veranja Karunaratne, the Vice Chancellor of SLTC Research University, and also Mr. Sandeep Jayawardana, who is the COO of SLTC Research University. So before we went off to the break, we were talking about that gap, the bridge that we need to, the gap that we need to bridge in the education industry. And you said it's important for children to identify which course to study and how it will affect in the future as well. So does SLTC provide that counseling service also before children enroll in these particular courses?
Yes, actively, because SLTC during its marketing campaigns for recruitment, in fact we are in the middle of one right now for a batch we are going to take in late September, early October. Very clearly, especially to the parents who remember, you know, when these kids themselves don't have the money to pay for their degrees, more often than not it's the parents who pay for them. So we need to convince the parents as well here in this case, not just the students, that they're investing in their kids' future in a wise way, money well spent. And as you know, many of the parents who pay for their children's education at the university level, many of them are not very well off. You know, it's their hard-earned money that they are spending on the future of their children, right? So they would like the return of their investment very much. And the number, most important thing that they look for is my child employable after graduation? Is there a job waiting for them? I'm happy to say in this private sector, tertiary university education sector, the most institutes would tell you their employment rates are over 95%. I don't know whether the state sector can boast of such high percentages, but certainly that is the case. And if that was not the case, these institutes would not grow at the rate that they're growing currently, because it's growing because of the confidence that the parents are putting in these institutes that there is a future employment for our child.
That's right. Mr. Sandeep, if you can add on to that as well to talk about the gap that needs to be bridged.
Right. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I think it's almost 200,000 students excel in their A-levels every year to a point where they can enter into university. But the state system can only take about 45,000 kids. I think almost 15,000 kids go overseas every year. That would have reduced now with the currency, but it happens. And I think the non-state private education institutes and universities, make up about 20-25,000 students a year. So there is almost 125,000 kids who don't have access to higher education opportunities. That is holding our whole country back. So there is a huge demand-supply gap that I don't think the state has the capacity to fill. So we need to encourage more private sector investment into the education field if we're going to take this country forward.
That's true. When coming back to SLTC again, where do you have your faculties available? I think one is in Paduka and one in Colombo here. Am I right?
Yes, the main campus is in Paduka. That is where the faculties of engineering, IT, business, science, technology exist. But Trace campus at the Trace Knowledge City here in Maradana is basically a added feature to the main campus, where we would like to do programs, particularly it's a new thing, this Trace campus to the repertoire of SLTC. So we hope in the future that Trace campus would house the postgraduate students who are registered for master's programs and would be popular in being able to do their lectures in Colombo, probably in the weekends, because postgraduate MSc students, like they're working adults, they like to work or get their degrees in the weekend. So Colombo would become more popular for those students than traveling all the way to Paduka. So that's where, so we want both places to add synergy to each other, not just isolated added items. So that synergy we believe we can obtain by moving the postgraduate arm, so to speak, to Trace Campus Maradana.
Okay, so another thing which I want to ask is, when students have to select an institute for their higher education, they have so many options. They have so many varieties of campuses or institutes or private institutes as well. And they might be having a hard time selecting, okay, which course am I going to do? Which university am I going to go? So why do you think students should come to y'all, and what is so special about SLTC?
Well, okay, so I actually studied science and then I ended up in finance, and now I work in an education company. So one thing is, I think students should also realize what you decide to study at 19, 20 is not what you have to do for the rest of your life. So pick something you love, look for the faculty you want to learn under, look at the courses that seem most interesting to you, and do something your heart is in, right? Pick that, and then you will do well at it. And then whatever, and it's not just the studies, it's also everything else you get from your university experience. That's what takes you forward in life. So I would say, don't be too narrow in your thinking. Think wide and think it's a long-term future for you. Pick what you like, pick what you want to do, and that's how you should approach what you want to study.
Okay, another thing which I want to clarify is, now Sri Lanka has been going through so many crises recently, one after the other. Let it be the COVID pandemic, the political crisis, the fuel crisis, economic crisis, and so on. And it has taken a toll on the education industry as well. And children have been falling back from their exams, and they had to, fall back on their studies, and their timeline also had been reduced because of that. So was SLTC also affected in that sort of way?
Yes, like every other institute, SLTC had its difficulties in combating the COVID isolations at home. Kids studied 100% online. But we overcame at SLTC by diligently delivering our lectures. So there were no delays in graduation, and that same thing cannot be said for non-state universities, right? Many delays, 6 months to 1 year delays have taken place. So we have it. That doesn't mean that challenges are not there. Parents find it more difficult to afford the fees because of the economic crisis. But I believe at the end of the day, if you don't have an educated workforce, you cannot develop a country. You need an educated workforce. The more educated people in the workforce, the better it is for the country. And with the current trend being that people are immigrating out of this country, leaving for postgraduate studies, probably never to return, I think it's even more important that we keep the home fires burning, that we keep producing these graduates, because without an educated workforce, Sri Lanka will continue to be in this crisis.
That's true. So we are reaching the end of our program also. So before we end, Mr. Sandeep, as a board member, what sort of support do you expect from individuals, from the government, and where are you all standing at the moment?
Okay, so one great benefit I see to SLTC is having a diverse array of corporate investors as the owners of the campus of the institution. I think industry experience is the main thing we can probably try to promote with our students. Internships, employment opportunities, getting your foot in the door. That's one of the key areas I'd like to focus on over the next year or two. How we get our students into the corporate world.
Okay, so is there anything else that you all would like to advise the young people who are going to select their university courses in this year?
Yeah, my final message to the kids who want to join SLTC would be that they're living in exciting as well as uncertain times because of the changes that we expect. But then they must also realize that no progress is ever possible without change. And at the end, it's those who are most responsive to the change, and we hope that it is the SLTC graduates who will survive, not the strongest nor the most intelligent, but those who are most responsive to change. And that is the spirit that we want to inculcate within SLTC, and that's the message that I would like to give the students out there as well.
That is so great, and this is all the time we have on the program as well. Thank you for sharing your ideas and your experience, and I really hope the changes that you're about to bring, Professor, would benefit all the students as well who are going to be joining and enrolling with SLTC as well. Wish you all the very best as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that was our episode on Business Best. We'll be back again next week with another product or service that would interest you. And just in case you can watch us on air, you can always rewatch by catching us on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Derana English. I'm Suzanne Shinali. Stay safe and have a good night.